Very warm welcome to you. Very exciting day. Today we are launching the Built Environment Carbon Database, and absolutely delighted that you can be with us to share in this launch event. My name is James Fisk. I'm the CEO of BCIS, the Building Cost Information Service, and chair of the Built Environment Carbon Database Steering Group. Today, I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping, and then I'll talk you through the agenda, give you a little bit of background, and then we'll move on to actually showing you and telling you what BECD is all about. So just in terms of housekeeping, we have got a section in the agenda for questions. Please feel free to ask any questions that you want using the question mark. So you literally hit the question mark, type in your questions, and we'll get round to those later on in terms of the webinar agenda. Now, we've got a limited time here, and as you can probably tell already, this is a live webinar where we'll be showing live versions of the system as well. So lots of technology challenges could obviously happen. We're going to be recording this session, so if you can't hear or you're having some kind of technological sort of difficulties, the recordings will be available on BCIS and BECD, plus anybody who's registered to join our webinar today, you will get a copy of the recording. So in terms of the questions, yeah, we'll only have time to answer some of those questions. For those that we don't, we're going to be continuing the debate on the BCIS LinkedIn channel, which is the address that hopefully you see in front of you. We're also today going to be running some poll questions, which will be, I believe, popping up in front of your screen during the course of the webinar. There's about 5 or 6 questions. I'd ask you all to try and complete those if you can. What we're trying to do is take really the temperature of the industry when it comes down to carbon reporting and carbon accounting. So we're just asking sort of 5 or 6 poll questions. If you can answer those, that would be fantastic. The results of which will also be shared in the same time as we're sharing the recording with you on this particular webinar. After the webinar, you'll be prompted to give us feedback. Please do, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever feedback that will help us sort of improve doing these in the future will be fantastic. Also, as part of that feedback, there's some additional questions, very similar to the poll questions that we're going to be asking you that again will help us get a sense of where we are in the industry in terms of carbon accounting, carbon reporting, all sorts of other connected pieces. So that's the housekeeping over and done with. Let's talk you quickly through our agenda today. So I'll be giving you a brief introduction in terms of the BECD, some of the history, some of the journey that we've been on, which has been quite long and in some places quite painful as well, but I'll talk to you a bit about the history. Then going to be passing over to Fabrizio Variali from the RICS, who'll be running us through the asset database, which is one very important part of the Built Environment Carbon Database. Fabrizio will then be handing over to Craig Jones from Circular Ecology, who'll be giving us an overview of the Built Environment Carbon Database product database. Sorry, too many databases there. So again, sort of two of the big important data repositories within the Built Environment Carbon Database. Craig will then hand back to me. I'll give a little summary and next steps in terms of what we're planning to do, and then we'll break into the questions. So hopefully that works as an agenda. And yeah, without any further delay, let's get into it. So to start off with is a bit of background. I'm not going to open the debate on climate change and scientific sort of debates about whether it's due to emissions or not. So don't worry. The only thing that I'm going to really use as an intro is that around about 40%, and I know this number changes depending on various sources, but about 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions do come from the built environment, and if they're left unchecked, i.e. we don't do anything about it, they're predicted to double by 2050. That's incredibly scary. And really, it's up to us as an industry, in the absence of the government kind of taking a lead and mandating carbon assessments and other bits in the built environment. It's up to us as construction professionals to do our bit to make sure that anything, no matter what job we're fulfilling in the industry, no matter what role we're doing, we can all influence carbon emissions in one way, shape or form. It's our ethical duty. It's our responsibility to do something about it. And really, that's hopefully why you're all joining today. You may be doing stuff already, or you may be planning to do stuff to lower emissions. And really what the Built Environment Carbon Database is all about is giving you another tool, another way of being able to do this. So in very simple terms, there's a few bits that we need in order to make sensible decisions in terms of specification or procurement decisions on construction projects. First of all, we need rules on how and what to measure in terms of carbon emissions, what to include, what to exclude, and how to go about it. And I believe there's a webinar going on exactly the same time with the RICS professional standard on whole life carbon accounting. So that really sort of helps us dictate what we need to do, how we do it, how we go about it. In addition to those rules, we need compliant software tools to help us to be able to do that. And I've underlined the word compliant because those that follow me on LinkedIn would have seen a bit of a rant from me a month or so ago about there's over 60 sort of carbon calculators out there in the industry, all working in different ways, which is great in terms of giving us some ammunition to start making the right decisions. But because they're all working different ways, and some of them aren't necessarily compliant with the rules that are on the left, then it gives us a real challenge in being able to sort of compare outputs and learn from each other. So having compliant software tools are incredibly important. Bottom left, in order to use those tools and the rules, we need trained and competent people to be able to do it. And then the missing part of the jigsaw, and very much the bit that we're here to talk to you today about, is the availability of consistent data. So just as a way of sort of building up even more anticipation, I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes about a bit of the background before we actually break in to Fabrizio and Craig's presentations that will be showing us the system itself. So just as a way of introduction, way back in autumn 2020, blimey, that's a long while ago, we held an industry workshop with supported by Arab and the University of Cambridge about what we should do about the RICS embodied carbon database. For those that have been in the scene, if you like, long enough, you will remember the RAP carbon database, which was the first time that the industry had tried to come together to produce something to capture carbon emissions for buildings. That got passed over to the RICS that evolved it. But we were finding at the RICS at the time that people were trying to access it. The quality of data within the embodied carbon database wasn't good enough. People weren't submitting data into it, and ultimately it was just getting worse and worse. So at that stage, we held an industry workshop with lots of people attending, which was great. And the results of those workshops sort of clearly indicated that we need a better platform. And we need it promoted across all of the built environment sort of professions. So at that stage, reached out to friends, colleagues, and people that I also didn't know from the various professional bodies. And we had a discussion and a chat about actually this shouldn't be a surveyor problem, or it shouldn't be a designer problem, or it shouldn't be a structural engineer's problem. It's an industry-wide problem. So let's get together and do something about it. And at that point, I'm pleased to say that in spring 2021, we formed the steering group of BECD. And the RICS then, a little bit later on, retired the RICS embodied carbon database in September 2022. So our mission, our objective, if you like, coming together was we know that data is an essential part of making the right decisions to drive down carbon emissions. I often use the example of if you ask 5 different carbon assessors to measure and report the same building, chances are you will get 5 different answers back. And that's no reflection of their skill sets, but they'll be making different assumptions, perhaps using different software and certainly using different data. So as a steering group, we wanted our objective was to provide a central, free to access online data repository. And it's important at this stage to note that not a calculator, not a tool, not a piece of software, but just a data repository that could be used by the industry. We wanted a platform to share and learn from each other, and we quite quickly, as the discussion started, realised that we probably don't just need one database. We need 2 databases. One for asset data, which is sort of a building level, a project level, so it could be a piece of infrastructure or a building, and one database to capture materials and product level emissions. We need this endorsed, and where possible, we need it mandated across the industry, because as we'll talk about later on, a central data repository like this is only ever going to be successful if people are using it and populating it with data and actually, supporting it across the industry. And we realised as a steering group at that stage that this is just step 1 of the journey. The step 1 is really to pull whatever data that we can together. So in some respects, we're addressing the availability of data issue. We can't quite yet address the consistency of data issue until we've pulled all of that data together and done some analysis. So this is very much step 1 in our journey, which is about sort of addressing the availability of data. So yeah, quite a bit of work has got in, huge amounts of effort, and I'll talk to you briefly about how we sort of set up working groups and others in a minute. We've done this without funding. In the absence of sort of the government drive that ideally we would have had, we've had to come together and do something about it. So lots of people have given up their time freely in order to develop the Built Environment Carbon Database. And a big shout out for BCIS, who have funded it. BCIS, obviously I'm the CEO of, is the Building Cost Information Service. We've been providing data to the industry from a costing perspective for about 65 years. We've funded the technology development, as well as some of the consultants that have supported us in terms of analysing data. Before I go into the working groups and sort of talk briefly about how we've set up, I'd also like to call out Fabrizio, who's next presenting, because none of this would have been possible without Fabrizio's support. Fabrizio has been managing the working groups and doing a lot of the legwork in terms of being able to get to where we have today. He's in many respects been my therapist over the last 3 years. We've gone through ups and downs in terms of the project, so I just wanted to call out Fabrizio and thank him personally for his hard work over the last sort of two and a bit years. But to get to where we have today, it's also been an industry effort. So as well as that funding from obviously BCIS and Fabrizio sort of driving us along, there's been lots of people involved in various working groups. Some of the logos that you see on the left will be a representation of some of the industry support that we've had. So we've had a working group looking at the asset level database that Fabrizio is going to be showing us in a little while. We've had a working group looking at the product level database that Craig's going to be showing us in a little while. Separately to that, we've had another working group looking at infrastructure and making sure that the Built Environment Carbon Database can support buildings and infrastructure. We've had a whole delivery team, not just BCIS and the technology that's driven and underpinned BECD, but also the consultants that we've used to help us crunch vast quantities of data. And Craig from Circo Ecology will be talking about that a little bit later on. And in addition to all that, we've also had a number of industry consultations and peer review sessions where lots of people from the industry have got involved and told us where we're going wrong and sometimes where we've gone right. And that's, without all of that feedback, again, we wouldn't be where we are today. The Built Environment Carbon Database website, BECD.co.uk, has got more details of the people that have been involved. I haven't got time, unfortunately, in this short webinar to call them out singly, but a big, huge thank you from me and the rest of the steering group in terms of all of the efforts that you've all made. Okay, so look, I've hopefully built up a bit of anticipation and excitement. So Fabrizio, can I pass over to you to give us an overview of the asset database, please?
Thank you, James. Good morning, everyone. Let me just share my screen so that I can show you. You should be able to see my screen. Can you confirm, James? I think you can.
I can, Fabrizio. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So as James says, I will be quickly talking about the asset database, which is one of the two main sections of BECD. I'm going to talk to you about the structure of the database and kind of the main steps that you use to enter data. So as said, the asset section of database is essentially the part of BCD that contains the results of project level carbon assessment. So we're talking about buildings, essentially. It is currently aligned with the first edition, the 2017, of the RICS Professional Standard Whole Life Carbon Assessment. That means that we can take in infrastructure projects as well as building, but as you probably know, the 2017 version is not very kind of well tailored to infrastructure, but I'll have more to say about that in a minute. What the asset database section contains is a format to collect both embodied and operational carbon. We also collect kind of key non-carbon data, which is then used to describe what the project is and effectively at the end do some very specific benchmarking. And the structure allows us to track carbon as the project progresses through different stages, essentially through different assessments. So the way that the database is structured, the main object that gets created first is the asset, to which there's a bunch of asset information which is associated, such as location, type, etc. To each of these assets, which represent a building, you can then create one or more assessment, and that's where kind of the main information goes. That allows you to create one assessment once you've done an early stage design, for example, another one a later stage post completion, as well as in use where you can report measured energy and carbon. So each of the assessment then contains a bunch of assessment information, and then the embodied carbon figure, as well as operational energy and carbon figures. Now, we also have an object that kind of can sit above the asset called complex, which is just a way to group different assets within the same, let's say, development, or can be, or a group of buildings. It's just a way to group things together. So I'm going to just talk you through very quickly on the main step, essentially, and I'm going to show you how that looks on the system. So when you're creating an asset and you enter data, effectively the first thing you do is create that asset and enter the associated information. You then create the assessment, that's it, the first one that sits below that asset. You enter all the information and any attachment you may want to add. And then you choose the publishing mode, which I'll explain in a minute. You then have an option to unlock the embodied carbon reporting. That means that collects all the results of the lifecycle module except B6 and B7. You enter the details about the embodied carbon assessment, and then you enter the embodied carbon figures. You can do that manually or via an Excel template. Then you can also choose to enter operational carbon. Similarly, you unlock the page, you enter some details about the assessment, and then you enter the operational carbon figures. And finally, you then publish the assessment. So to show you how that looks on the system should be able to see my screen still. This is how the system looks like. You have a choice here to go and look at your asset. This is the test one that I created previously. So basically the first thing you do is you go and create new asset. You enter the information here. There's obviously a name. There's fields that are marked with an asterisk and mandatory, otherwise are not. You enter all the data, and then you click on create, and you create that. So then once that's been created, it will appear underneath any previous ones. And then I'll show you how you add an assessment to a previously created asset. You still open this page. You then open this menu here, and then you add a new assessment where you can choose to copy an existing one, and then you add it, so you don't have to re-enter some of the fields that have been entered, or you can choose to ignore and just create a new one from scratch. And in a similar way, there's a page where you enter all the details. There's way more data fields here. There's a space to add attachment, and then there's the user agreement where you choose whether you want to publish in full visibility mode or anonymized mode, which I will explain in 1 minute. There's 3 tabs down here, one which contains fields for project sizing, such as cost, dimensions, height, etc. Another one with technology, which is essentially what the building made of, specifying foundation type, for example, or heating service type. And then there's a tab with retrofit works, which gets activated effectively only if you choose a project type up here, which is a retrofit type. And once you finish, you click on create, and that creates the assessment. Once that's created, then you can choose to enter embodied carbon or operational carbon, or both. Let's use the previously created one. As an example, I won't be filling in, but essentially you're asked first to unlock this page. You then have another set of information about the assessment itself, some of which are mandatory. And then down here, you have your embodied carbon table. This is aligned with the professional standard of RICS, so where you have the life cycle modules in the columns and your building elemental divisions in the rows. You can enter these figures manually by unlocking the row that you want to enter, so the system knows that that row has been assessed, and then you enter the figures here. Or you can also use an Excel template, as I was saying. You download that, you autofill it, and then you upload it, and that will autofill the cells here. And once you're finished, you can navigate back to this. As I was saying, then you essentially enter also operational energy and carbon here. Similarly, you unlock this page here, you enter your data, and once you're finished, you can save and navigate back. And once you're confident you enter all the right information, you will then click on publish. And then it's obviously giving me the error that I haven't entered anything yet. So I'll close it to make sure it's not giving me the error. That should now work. A pop-up will come up telling you that you've chosen to publish this in visibility mode. Again, I will explain in a minute. And once you're happy with that, click on publish. And the assessment is now published. Takes a minute to process. So if I could go back to my presentation. I'll briefly talk about the publishing mode. You will find more information about this in the user agreement as well as in the guidance. Publishing an assessment essentially means that the data becomes part of the BECD sample and then cannot be edited. So it's important that you make sure that everything that you enter is correct before you hit the publishing button. If you do want to edit an assessment after you have it published because you realize there's a mistake or you want to cancel it, you want to replace it, you need to contact us. And there's just a button, as I was showing before, where there's essentially the admin gets notified, you provide a reason, and if the reason is acceptable, we'll bring it back to an unpublished status. So when you publish an assessment, you're asked to choose if it's published in visibility mode or anonymized mode. So full visibility mode means that everything that you've entered about the assessment, the asset, the carbon figures, except personal name and email addresses, will be accessible to the other users through the export files. Now, you can still anonymize those project essentially, because you can choose a generic name, so you don't have to release the actual name, like the shard. You can call it office, and you can choose not to disclose the address location of the building. So if it is kind of a common building, it will be pretty much anonymous. But you can also choose to publish in anonymized mode, meaning that everything that you've entered won't be visible to other users, but will be visible to us, BCD administration staff, which will use it then to do some analysis on it. That brings me to talk about the export file, which is essentially for users to download everything that's in the database, not just your project, but everything that other people have entered. Everything that people have entered and published in full visibility mode. It's available to download in a CSV file that contains, as I said, everything except personal name and email addresses. You can choose to download that in bulk, everything together, or you can select a smaller sample of assessment. You might want to download, for example, only residential units. Now, that CSV file can be used for statistical analysis, benchmarking. There will be upcoming guidance on the file structure that'll explain how that works, so that can help you. But we will also periodically release statistical analysis. And as I was saying, our sample will be essentially a larger sample that includes also those assessments that have been published in anonymized mode. Just to conclude, saying a few words on the current status. At the moment, as we go live today, we got a few projects published. We have several ones in the pipeline. Those have been entered in November 2022 to the beta version and are ready to be published. So if you were one of the people that very kindly gave us data, possibly in conjunction with the data collection for the net zero carbon building standard, you can go on BCD today, use the same account that you used previously. You will find your projects there. Please go check that you're happy with the publishing mode that you're going to be asked to be selected, and then publish the assessment. And then we will be adding more projects in the coming weeks. And then it's up to the industry to add more projects. Just to mention future developments for the asset database, we are already working to align with the second edition of the RICS professional standard. That means better infrastructure format for reporting, etc. But we're also looking to streamline the data entering process, essentially setting up transfer file from carbon assessment softwares so that you can autofill as many fields as possible. Finally, there is guidance available on the website. There's a user guide, there's some video tutorials, frequently asked questions that will be expanding. And for technical support, please email becdsupport@becd.co.uk. That was all of it. Now I'm going back to Craig. Craig, you want to introduce the product database? Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'll just share my screen. Okay, can someone confirm they can see my PowerPoint presentation?
All good, Craig. Thank you.
Good. Brilliant. Hi, everyone. I'm Craig Jones from Circular Ecology, and we've been working to help launch the products database. And we've got a few slides here to show you what's in the database. So to give you a bit of an overview, the product level carbon assessment database has a lot of data primarily from environmental product declarations from EPDs. The data contains the A1 to A3 cradle to gate embodied carbon or global warming potential GWP values. And it starts by taking the data from EPDs. There's various repositories that have provided the data, and it's got into the BECD database. Now, the key repositories are EcoPortal, which is Europe's repository for environmental product declarations, and they provided a lot of data. EC3, which is a free embodied carbon tool from Building Transparency, and a large amount of data has come from EC3 as well. Those are the two key data sources currently, and there are plans that you can submit data from other data sources. And if a manufacturer has portfolio carbon footprints, they can bulk upload their footprints to BCD and publish for the world to see. Now, in terms of what kind of data is in there, there's a lot of data. So there's 34,000 data points currently in BCD. There's been many challenges to get the data into BCD from primarily digital EPDs. And the data that's made it through is about 6,000 data points from the eco portal and almost 29,000 from EC3. So these two data sources together have provided over 34,000 data points to the BECD product database. I've got some other figures and charts showing breakdowns. So here's the age of data, and you can see there's some very new EPD data. Most of the data is in fact beyond 2020, so within the last few years, which is great to see. Here's a breakdown by classification because the data has been classified according to the BCIS classification system, which is where these headers come from. And you can see the building materials is over 16,000 records, which I've got a breakdown chart coming up next. But if you have a look, there's all sorts of products in here because EPDs are for real products rather than just the material. So there is a very broad range of data in there for a very wide range of products. If we look at the largest classification, building materials, on the next slide, we've got how that breaks down. So we've got a large amount of data for ready-mix concrete, which is understandable as there's many different mixtures you can put together, and all of the key kind of construction materials you'd expect in there. So there is a huge amount of data in the BECD product database, primarily from EPDs. Now, this data set is also really valuable to help us update the inventory of carbon and energy ICE database, and the update has been sponsored by BCIS too. So this data set provides 10 times more data than we previously had to analyze for the ICE database, which is going to make a really big difference to updating the data in the future. Now, we plan before the end of this year for an incremental update to ICE version 3.1 before the end of this year. We've got some issues to fix. We've got some newer materials for newer data for some materials. But then the larger task of getting to ICE version 4 will be for next year, to launch next year, using the BECD data set, which, as I said, provides 10 times more data than we previously had from EPDs, which is a fantastic resource to have. Now, in terms of the data, I'll go and hopefully you can see the browser now. So this is what the database looks like online when you log in. On the left, you'll see the product level database, and you'll see two tabs. So you can submit a new product or you can search for products. Now, if I go to the submit a new product, you can input data for from an EPD or from your own carbon calculations that are to not an EPD. They don't need to be an EPD. And you could fill in all of these fields and submit. I won't go through that because the same data is apparent when you view the data set. So when you're searching for EPDs for products, I've searched for carpets here, and there's over 1,200 records for carpets. So there's a lot of choice, it's fair to say. And here you can see some of the key details along here, all the different choices. And when you click on something, you can see at the bottom here some of the key information. So you can see a bit of a description. You can see that this is for 1 meter squared of carpet, which is a great functional unit for a carpet because it makes sense. You can see it comes from EC3. When it comes from EC3, there's some notes on their global warming method because they have multiple GWP figures in EC3. And when you scroll down, you'll see the number that you're looking for, what's the embodied carbon per meter squared of that carpet. If it's to the newer EPD format, it will display it with a breakdown of fossil biogenic land use change. You can also click through to the source. This one goes through to EC3, which you need to be logged in to access, but it is freely accessible, and you can find more information there. If it's from the Eco Portal, it will click through to a format like this from the various EPD programs. So this one's IBU, but EnviroDeck or the other EPD programs often have this similar standardized format for further information on that EPD. So there is a wealth of data to have a look and explore and go around, making the EPD data and GWP values a lot more accessible than they previously were. If I go back to the presentation. Now, just to give you a bit of a summary, here's the information that it currently contains. And ideally all the data will be filled in, but it's amazing how many challenges you have on getting all the data filled in from digital EPDs. Digital EPDs are great, but I have to say they've got a bit of a way to go of filling in a lot of the key information that should be available. So there's some great data in there, and the key info is in there, such as functional units, GWP, so you can pick up and apply to your assessments quite nicely. Now, in terms of further development of the product database, users are very much encouraged to submit new data, not just from EPDs. So data from EPDs has started to be available through digital EPDs, but there's data doesn't need to be from an EPD to be useful, because EPDs are quite expensive. So if you've done EN 15804 calculations and assessments, but it's not an EPD, you can submit that to the platform. Product portfolio footprint assessments, if you're a manufacturer and you've done assessments of entire product ranges or everything you make, email the BECD email address at the end of this presentation and speak to them about a bulk upload to the platform. You wouldn't want to upload them one by one, but we can get them in there through a bulk upload. Lifecycle assessments, if a full LCA has been done, it can only accept carbon results at the moment, but they're welcome to be uploaded. Journal papers containing carbon data, and in fact, any good carbon calculations are encouraged to be uploaded to the platform by users. Now, the data needs to be activated before it's being published. So once you submit it, someone will approve it to be published. And because it's submitted by users, we're working to put together a data quality framework, which will display to other users an indicator of the potential data quality of that data set, rating it for things such as adherence to standards. So is it EN 15804? Yes, great, well aligned with a construction assessment standard in the UK or Europe, or is it to no standard, which gets a low score, but we still welcome data to be submitted. Level of external review, is it reviewed like an EPD is, or is it self-published, or is it third-party done by experts? Age of data, how old is the data? And any supporting information available. So is a full technical report available that someone can interrogate and have a look at how the GWP numbers were calculated, method, allocation, background data, etc. Or is there very limited supporting information available? So we're working on getting that data quality framework in there so that when user-submitted data is put in the platform, you can see at a glance how the potential quality of the data might be according to some key criteria. Now, that gives a bit of a summary of an overview of where the product level database currently is and where it plans to go in the future. And in summary, it's a new database and there's a large amount of data. So any issues you encounter, please submit to the email address here. And I'd like to finally close just on a reminder for people, please do submit your data to the BEC database. So it's very valuable to submit data so that others can pick up and use and improve the accessibility of data in the industry for construction products. At this point, I'll hand back over to James.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Fabrizio. That's excellent. We're getting a large number of questions in, which is obviously fantastic, fantastic to see. But a stark reminder that I need to be quick in terms of sort of summarising things if we can. So I'm just going to go back and share my screen. And if somebody can just confirm that you can see my screen, please. Verbally, if possible. Yeah, I'm assuming you can see it. Great. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Fabrizio. So hopefully, as everyone can see, a considerable amount of effort has gone into getting where we are. But again, a frank reminder that this is just the beginning of the journey. Some of the questions that are coming through, yeah, BECD is a free database. It's not perfect. It's designed to try and pull whatever data that we can find from various sources together to make it easier for people to make sensible decisions. But it is just the beginning. It's just the start of our journey. This is an industry database, so as the slide says, we need to use it, or it will wither on the vine, very much like the RICS embodied carbon database that we were talking about at the beginning of the session. So a call to action, really, a plea from me and everybody else that's been involved in BECD so far is get involved in it. Tell people about it, literally get onto your social media, tell people that you've been at the launch, tell people that you're supporting it, speak to people who you're working with, clients that you're doing consultancy for, explain the benefits about sort of BECD to them. This really is in the hands of the industry now, whether BECD becomes a success or just something else that we'll talk about as sort of a project that didn't last the test of time. It's an industry database. Share data in it, as we heard from Craig and Fabrizio. A data repository like BECD is only good if people are sharing data in it. So please do take the time to speak to your clients, or even anonymously publish data into it. Please do make that effort to start sharing data and experience. But most importantly, use it to drive down emissions in the built environment, which is really what BECD is all about. We want people to be informed, to be starting to make decisions that will ultimately impact on the reduction of emissions in the built environment. Use BECD as what it is, another tool that can be used in the battle against sort of climate change. Before we move on to sort of questions, I just wanted to give you a quick little taster, really, of what BCIS is up to in this space. We're very conscious that it's quite complex at the moment to try and do sort of carbon assessments, and as the graphic sort of shows us, generally on teams, there's lots of measurement that would happen on a construction project, but often teams that are doing that measurement will be doing it in isolation. So you'll have quantity surveyors such as myself that would be measuring things for cost and price. You'll have separate teams doing measurement for carbon assessments. Sometimes they share, sometimes they don't. Separate teams trying to work out social impacts. So as an industry, we need to try and pull those things together a lot more than certainly what I'm witnessing in the industry. So we need to pull those together so there's one measurement process that can start to feed all of those activities, which sounds great, of course, but the reality is, as we've heard from Craig already, that there is inconsistencies with the EPDs that are reported in terms of things like the units of measure, which makes it very hard to sort of link a common centralized measurement process together. Those units of measure that are used by EPDs are also not necessarily aligning to the way we price things. So it may be like an example of a window that the glazing and the frame and everything are all measured and reported differently, whereas from a cost perspective, we're costing one number window. So there's a lot of work that we need to do to make those units of measure consistent across the activities, so that each of those teams can actually do what they need to out of it. There's a piece of work that BCIS has been involved with, supported by Sterling DCS, who are a cost and carbon software tool. What we've been doing is linking the BCIS cost data, that 65 years of cost information that BCIS has been capturing, along with the data that's starting to be pulled out of BECD, so that we can produce that commonality, that consistent unit of measure, so that teams can start to report cost and carbon at the same time. Launching in November, we're going to have the BCIS materials database, which will contain about 8,000 materials that will be linked between cost and carbon values. It will also contain other essential information that for procurement and sort of estimating, so size, weight, past inflation, future inflation, so how much that product is expected to sort of increase over the next 12 months. Along with, over the next few months, we'll be adding more and more information, including things like lead times. So if you ordered it today, how available is that material? How quickly can you get it onto site? That materials database will feed into a high-level sort of life cycle cost and carbon calculator that we're producing, which will be available around January 2024. And this is designed to make all of those quite complex standards, so the RICS professional statement. The idea is that someone will be able to go on here, use that data, use the data with the cost data and the carbon data from BCIS and BECD into something that makes it much easier to produce, and it will output in accordance with the standards as you would expect. So NRM1 or NRM3 from a cost perspective, and obviously the RICS professional standard on whole life carbon. So you'll be able to go in there and sort of swap materials around and see what the impact is in terms of cost and carbon over the life of the project. So that's a calculator that we're working to really support in the main, to be honest, SMEs that are currently struggling in this space, whereas some of the larger companies have slightly larger R&D budgets and can develop their own things. We need something that works across the industry that can support these decisions. If you're interested in staying informed in all of the stuff that's going on in the carbon space, there's a QR code which is a bit beyond my technology ability, but supposedly you can point a camera at it and follow the link, and you'll be able to sign up to the BCIS carbon newsletter. If you're a little bit more old school like me, then the web address is also there. This will be a carbon newsletter that will talk about all of the things sort of happening in the carbon world to help us all stay informed and stay up to date with what's going on. Okay, so what we're going to do now is break into questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Fabrizio and Craig, if you could share your cameras. Great. Hopefully you're both off mute. As I said, we've got a large number. We've got over 100 questions, which we're certainly not going to have time to do because we're already slightly over time. So let's pick on a couple of things. There's a few questions, Craig, as you were speaking about what's the difference between the ICE database and the built environment carbon database in terms of the product side. So I don't know if you want to just pick up that one.
Yeah, so the BECD database has data for individual EPDs. So you'll find data for a specific manufacturer's carpet or a specific make of brick. But the ICE database is looking to bring data together for what's the typical impact for a carpet of a meter squared or a kilogram of brick.
Brilliant. Very, very clear. And we are looking to get that data onto the built environment carbon database at some stage as well, Craig, aren't we? Unless that's changed.
Yes,
yeah. Great. So that will be available at some point in the near future. We've got a question around international, Fabrizio. I wonder if I can come to you on this one.
Sure.
So obviously, is BECD just UK, or is it something that can be used?
No, it's not just UK, though it is fairly tailored to kind of UK context. So in terms of the product database, you can submit and you will find products that are not just from the UK. In terms of the asset database, you can submit projects that are not located in the UK, so any country of the world. The issue being there that because it is aligned with the RICS professional standard, and particularly the old version was very much UK tailored, especially in the building elemental division. Effectively, if you've done an assessment according to RICS professional standard, then the database can take that. Even if it's not done according to that, it can still take it. But so yeah, the answer is yes, it can be used for things that are not in the UK.
Right, thank you, Fabrizio. We've got quite a few questions relating to verification of data. So I know, Craig, you covered sort of the data quality indicator in your presentation. I don't know if you just want to reiterate that, or whether that wasn't necessarily understood by the people who've joined the webinar today.
Yeah, so the data currently in the platforms come from EPDs and provided from Ecoportal and EC3. So it's data that's originally from EPDs. EPDs are verified, so it has some assurance level. You are wise to click through and check against the EPDs and report any areas that you do find. It is a large data set, so that's encouraged. The data quality framework being developed will then show you which key areas for user submitted data, or all data, in fact, is it in line with the method? Has it been external reviewed? And key issues which will help show you the visibility of assurance level of the data or quality of the data. Again, users, when they pick up the data and put it in their calculations, like any data, should run checks against individual data points that they're picking up as well, as would be done on any detailed assessment.
Thanks, Craig. Fabrizio, is there anything you want to say in terms of the asset database and sort of?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about that, essentially data validation for the asset database. So questions are about, are you going to validate the data? And the short answer is no, because we cannot, as BECD. We're not third-party verifiers of whole life carbon assessment. What we can do is to make sure that the type of information that's entered by the user then allows other users to make a judgment whether they want to include that particular asset in their pool, in their sample of things they're using to benchmarking. We ourselves, we will be doing some checks about the projects that are entered. When we do the statistical analysis, obviously we'll look at the pool and we'll clean it up. But we can't perform the kind of very detailed analysis that is needed to validate an assessment. But there are things that are asked, such as, is it aligned with the standard, with the N15978? Is it aligned with the professional standard? Is it third-party verified? And other types of data points that the users and we will be able to essentially use to filter out projects that you might not think that are as good as others. You can also do that by choosing projects that are only assessment that are only done post completion, for example. So there are ways to kind of restrict the pool to the more accurate projects.
Brilliant, thank you, Fabrizio. Picking up a couple of questions, we haven't actually explained yet how people can get access to
So there's going to be the link to the database on becd.co.uk. Just after we close this webinar, we'll update the homepage of becd.co.uk, where you will see the link to the actual database URL. And again, as I said, if you create an account before in November with a beta version, you should be able to access it with the same account. Otherwise, no, you just need to create a new account.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Just to confirm that everybody who's registered will obviously get a copy of the recording, which includes the slides. We will, after this webinar, be answering all of the questions that we've received, and everyone will get a copy of those answers, because obviously we can't get through all of them today. We're already over time, but I'm going to be cheeky and just keep going for a couple more minutes. We're getting some questions around access into the system via an API. So just to confirm, at the moment an API isn't available for BECD. It's certainly on our roadmap to do so. There is some debate and thinking from the BECD steering group in terms of whether that API should be made freely available, or whether there should be a charge associated with it. Obviously, lots of people have put in lots of time and money, and there's an element that grinds me personally, that perhaps commercial software might benefit from all of that hard work without actually contributing into the ongoing funding and maintenance at least. So there's a bit of thinking to be done on the API from a technology perspective, as well as a sort of a commercial perspective as well. So stay tuned. If you sign up to that BCIS carbon bulletin, you'll get updated information on where we are with that kind of development. I'm just scanning through all of the questions. Is there one or two more? Fabrizio, Craig, I don't know if
I think, yeah, there was a few questions on a timeline for infrastructure and update with the new professional standard. So the notice, though the new professional standard has been launched, it's not in force yet, technically. I think there's a 9-month interim period. And so hopefully in that 9-month interim period, we will be updating BCD so that you effectively, one of the things you select when you create an assessment, you say it's aligned with the new professional standard, and that will automatically change the reporting framework. And that includes infrastructure. If you select an infrastructure asset type, that again will automatically select the right reporting format.
That's great. Thank you, Fabrizio. Just on infrastructure, I don't know if we called out that we've already had a commitment from Mott MacDonald to share infrastructure data, which is exactly the type of support and leadership that we need from the industry. So Mott MacDonald have agreed to share their starting with highways data, and that will be available. I don't think it's in the BECD just yet. Fabrizio,
there are some initial projects already, yes.
There are already. That's great. So yeah, we're starting to get infrastructure data in there, but that will obviously improve as we update BECD to reflect the new RICS professional standard. Okay, right. I think I've been cheeky enough, and we're probably at the stage where we need to call time, unless there's any last thoughts, either from yourself, Fabrizio, or you, Craig, in terms of any questions or bits that you think we haven't answered that we probably should while we're together.
No, I think that's fine. I think it just just want to reiterate, its use of the database is entirely free to access, both to obviously enter the data, but also to download the data, the asset data. And again, it's not a calculation tool, so it doesn't replace the software assessment tools that are out there. It's a place for you, when you finish that assessment, to publish that data, to basically share it with the rest of the industry, and then obviously take data from the rest of the industry and compare it against your own project. Yeah.
And it's probably just worth adding to that even though the tool is free, there are obviously terms and conditions in terms of being able to use the tool to support the mission of BECD, which is obviously to drive down emissions. We don't want people using the data to sort of rubbish other projects or anything like that. This is designed to be something that supports the industry drive to decarbonise, as opposed to anything that could be a detriment to another party. So the user, as you register, you'll be prompted to look and agree to the user agreement. So basically the terms and conditions. Okay, great. We will leave it there. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. Yeah, as I said, recordings will be available along with copies of the poll, which we didn't get quite time to release today. So we'll release those later, along with any answers to the post-webinar evaluation sort of questions that we're also prompting. So we'll package all those things together and get those to everyone who's registered, and start to put those also on BECD and BCIS. So yeah, again, thank you for joining. Fabrizio, Craig, absolutely awesome. Really appreciate you joining. And thank you everyone for the ongoing support for BECD. Stay in contact, register, and register for the BCIS Carbon Bulletin. And we'll be speaking again shortly, I am sure. Thanks everyone, really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Everyone.